Hello everyone and welcome to part 3 of the Satisfactory modding tutorial. In this tutorial I'll be covering overriding vanilla items in the game. You're going to want an additional program along with the dependencies to do this. It's known as UModel. This will allow you to find the items that are already in the game and determine their location within the game files. That's how you're going to overwrite them. So with this, you're going to have to browse to your Satisfactory pack location. That'll be Epic Games, Satisfactory Early Access, Factory Game, Content, Packs, and select folder, and then click OK. Now this is where all the game files are. If you're not looking for anything specific, I have spent a lot of time just perusing these folders. All the items for the game are within Factory Game, but you have stuff like the cinematics folder, that'd be the starting cinematic, and geometry, which is rock, meshes, leaves, stuff like that. For the sake of this tutorial, I will just be overriding an item. Now if you're looking for something specific, it is easier to go into the flat view and then filter an item out. So I will be changing the nuclear fuel rod. Let's search that up. So we have the recipe for the fuel rod, the descriptor, the mesh, and the UI. That's all we have to worry about for overriding it. So let's navigate to where the mesh is. So that'll be parts, nuclear fuel rod, mesh. Now within the starter project, you have all the folders for the items already. So you'll just find the nuclear fuel rod folder, but there will not be a mesh or a UI folder, so I'll create those now. And then we have to put a placeholder within the mesh and UI folder, and this can be literally anything. So for the mesh, I just have a cube. Open that, save it. As you can see, it's just a cube. But once we open the fuel rod in-game, the fuel rod will actually have its model, because we're not overriding the model. So this cube will get the name SM nuclear fuel rod _01. And that is it for the mesh. So we will go to the UI folder, where I will just drop 2 Satisfactory logos, just to prove my point. So the first one will be named nuclear fuel rod _256. And the second one will be named nuclear fuel rod 64. And then we can change the descriptor. So this would be where the spent fuel class would be the waste. So once the fuel rod is spent, it'll produce 5 waste. For the sake of this fuel rod, it'll produce no waste once it's spent. You'll check this box. I'll name this nuclear fuel rod. And for the descriptor or description, I will set a modded fuel rod. The stack size by default is small. I'll set that to huge. This can be discarded. The energy value by default is 75,000. I'll set this to 100,000. The radioactive decay by default is a higher value than 0, but I will leave it as 0. It is a solid. The mesh will be the SM nuclear fuel rod 01. I will set the item category to tutorial, but you can find the item category within here. I would just figure out what that is within game if you want it to be exactly the way it is in game. You can find that and then create the category file where it's supposed to be and then set that. The icons will be our Satisfactory logos. The small icon will be 64. The large icon will be 256. And then we can compile and save. Close that. Now you want to right click the descriptor, overwrite in mod, check that box, and then we'll unpack it. Now that we're in game, I have a fuel rod, and you can see we have a modded fuel rod, and I will build a nuclear reactor to show that this fuel rod is real. Now it wouldn't let me put it in there if it wasn't a fuel rod, but I don't have any water or any power consumption set up, so I can't actually use that fuel rod. But once that fuel rod was used, there would be no waste. Now let's say you wanted to change the recipe for the nuclear fuel rod. That would be in recipes, constructor, recipe nuclear fuel rod. So recipes, constructor, and then nuclear fuel rod. We'll set the display name to nuclear fuel rod. The ingredients will be a single leaf. The product will be our fuel rod. And one of those. Set produced in to constructor. Since it's a single input, it can be the constructor. And workbench. We will compile and save that. And then right click it, overwrite in mod, select your mod, close it, and unpack it. And now that we're in game, we can search for the nuclear fuel rod, which just normally cannot be made in the workbench. And we can go to our constructor, and the fuel rod is within there as well. So let's make one of those. And they're still non-radioactive, and they only cost a single leaf now. Now, keeping the theme with the nuclear items, we can change the recipe for the nuclear generator. So let's find that. That'll be factory game, recipes, buildings, recipe generator, nuclear. So let's go to that location. We will open up the generator nuclear. Set the name to nuclear generator. And keeping with the theme of leaves, I will set that to one leaf. The product will be the nuclear generator. Descriptor nuclear, or descriptor generator nuclear. That'll produce one. It'll be produced in the build gun. Every building in the game is made within the FG build gun, unless you make your own build gun. Compile and save. Right click the generator nuclear, and then overwrite in mod. And then we'll unpack it. And now that we're in game, we can go to our nuclear generator, and it will only cost us one leaf. We now have leaf-powered nuclear generation. Nothing overpowered about that. And that's where I will end the tutorial. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments.